a lot of applause. Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here of Dr. Judy WTF. Happy New Year. It is a new 2019 fresh year, and I've been contemplating what I want to start the new year out with, and I decided to start out with how to have and develop a great relationship with yourself, and really what that means. Because as some of you know, what we end up believing about ourselves and formulating about the world and how we are in the world has to do a lot with our blueprint, our mothers, our fathers, our primary caregivers. And at the end of the day, people in our lives come and go, and it is really what we relate to within ourselves that matter, what we think about ourselves, our perception of ourselves in the world. And so I want to start with a quote by Diane von Furstenberg. I just like this quote. I thought it was a great way to describe the most important relationship in your life is the relationship you have with yourself, because no matter what happens, you will always be with yourself. And that's a quote by Diane von Furstenberg, designer. So many of you know that I created a mind map to help human disconnect. And putting the mind map up, I'll explain a little bit more so that you can understand how we disconnect from ourselves, starting with mother, infant disconnect, father, infant disconnect, family disconnect. And by the way, this is a call-in show, so please do call in 323-843-2826. And I want to talk a little bit, and then I'll kind of balance between discussion and call-ins and so forth, and hopefully answer a lot of your questions. So the mind map is a system I created originally to heal global disconnect, a very, very ambitious project I had back in the day. And I discovered that it was a perfect model for healing on a micro level as well, healing human disconnect. And so I started applying the system of healing to my individual patients. And what I found is that they healed more rapidly, more deeply, sustainably. And as a result of this, I abandoned traditional therapy, which is based on a lot of talking and a lot of really concentrating on daily events and so on, which is valid. It's just that what I want to do, the plan of the mind map, is to help you think like a shrink so that you don't go into pitfalls in life. And when you do fall into chaos and breakdowns, you can climb out and you can learn how to do something that I think is really essential to growth, which is self-reflect and self-correct. I talk about that quite a bit, and I will talk about that more today. So I want to go through the mind map to show everyone how we begin the process of not having a relationship with ourselves and what that looks like and how that breaks down so that we can learn how to take that to a cleaner level. In essence, clean out the poisons from the past, reboot the system, reconnect to ourselves, and have a better outcome to part 2 of our lives. So going through the mind map, if you take a look at the top third of the mind map, you will see childhood wounds, reactions, and encoding. And these childhood wounds, which I've identified basically 5 of: physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, I group those together, sexual abuse, smothering, and neglect. When we are subject to these levels of abuse within our family of origin, and I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced some level of something. I just haven't met that person yet, but if you are that person, I want to hear from you. The white picket fence childhood, it just is a pretty rare phenomenon, especially today. So when we experience these shadows, as I like to call them, these disconnects, what happens is it shatters the core of our being. It shatters us and we don't know how to stabilize these feelings, and we become destabilized emotionally. We get reactions such as depression, anxiety. We start the disconnection process. Babies sometimes get so hopeless and helpless that they turn inward and start shutting down. And as a result of this, you can see that the disconnection from the core of self. First of all, let me back up a little bit. The core of self never gets strong. It never gets connected in the first place. And so this chasm, if you will, starts to grow and spread, and then it starts to self-infect. In panel 3, you will see encoding, and this encoding represents the infection of, I call it psychoviruses. I have my own terminology, as many of you know. And psychoviruses is my way of describing the messages that land in our head that we psychologically inherit from our parents, our grandparents, multi-generational pass downs of messages, nonverbal messages, verbal messages, and so on. And these messages thwart and distort our view of ourselves, again, affecting our relationship with ourselves. Because you have to understand that in order to have a relationship with yourself, you have to clear out the relationship that didn't work between your primary caregiver, because that blueprint oftentimes is not a great blueprint to march forward in life with. So, for example, if you were unwanted as a child, which many of my patients claim to have been, a lot of rejection, a lot of parental messages that leave them with the sense that they don't matter, that they're not lovable, that they're not special, and so on. When these messages get indoctrinated, encoded into the fiber of our being, what happens is that we throw ourselves to the side, basically kick ourselves to the curb, and we make those messages number one. And that's pretty normal for a child to do, because as parents, I'm generally talking about the parental figures, the leaders, the blueprinters of children, are who we look to self-define. So if we look to a bad blueprint to self-define, we're not going to have a very good relationship with ourselves. So I am going to take callers, 323-843-2826, and I want to hear a little bit about your relationship with yourself and maybe how you've noticed that these shadows have interfered with self-love, self-esteem, ability to think clearly, ability to manifest the best of your best, because it is a new year, and our job as human beings is to clear out the past and to become the best of our best through identifying the lies that we believed in, removing the painful psychological poisons that we ingested from our multi-generational past, and then being responsible for recoding into a better person, a better version of us. So again, the number is 323-843-2826, and I'm taking calls, and please don't be shy, call in. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I am giving away free PDF versions of my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect. I want everybody to have this information about the mind map system. I want people to understand that we can heal even though we have been injured and disconnected from. There is a pathway to healing. And also, furthermore, I'm extending the offer of the Mind Map video series, which is normally $595. It is still available to you through the end of January for $195. And then, of course, you know that many of you know that I have a wonderful team, people who work at various fee scales. So if you need assistance in going through this journey with a live person, we have live people that will help you through. So going back to the mind map, let's look at panel number 4, 5, and 6, because what happens is when we're disconnected from, we never really form a very strong core sense of self. And when this core sense of self is weak, when it is built on unsustainable information, I call them misinformation, miscoding, basically boiling down to lies that lead us to believe that we're not lovable, that we're stupid, that we will never amount to anything, and so on and so forth. What happens is that this weak core sense of self, if you will call it that, is easily triggered and easily shaken. And so what does that mean? That means that anybody can come along and look at you or say something to trigger it and take you down into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And that chaos could be a mental chaos. A person may be triggered into anxiety. A person may be triggered into a state of depression. It can take you down in chaos in the sense of creating unstable relationships that then become what I call a WTF, a reliving of past instability within the family system. And then as a result of this, what happens is that the core self stops growing. Because if you look at panel number 5, which represents defenses, well, defenses are excellent. Sometimes they work really well. However, sometimes they lock us in psychological prison and we stop growing. So if you remember Biology 101, remember that a healthy cell, remember cell biology, permeable membranes, non-permeable membranes, maybe it's been a while since you took those classes. And then if you remember what a semi-permeable membrane is, which is that it lets in the good and keeps out the bad. So as a result of these childhood injuries in panel 1, physical abuse, verbal, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, smothering, we defend against this because we don't want to be hurt. So we go on lockdown. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we may become too permeable. Maybe we don't have boundaries. Maybe we don't know how to set limits and so on. And so that opens us up to a lot of psychological toxins, if you will. And when we become too permeable, then we start psychologically dying a different kind of death. And when we become non-permeable, we lock ourselves in that darkness, and I call it that double dungeon of darkness, if you will, a term that I use to describe a child who turns to one parent, that parent isn't there for him or her, turns to the other parent, that parent isn't there for him or her, and at the end of the road, the child turns inward, and if there isn't a lot of positive programming, if there isn't a lot of eye contact, skin contact, nurturance, and so on, what happens is that the child doesn't have much of a sense of self. So then the child starts to act out in terms of imploding or exploding. And the implosion can be seen in terms of anxiety and depression, and the explosion can be seen in terms of hostile behavior or hostile words spit outward. So either way, none of those ways of expression are healthy. So what we are looking for is a balance, a semi-permeable membrane. So going back to how to develop a relationship with yourself. Now we're on panel number 6, and I like to break everything down in terms of the mind map. So breaking it down in terms of the mind map, panel number 6 is break down, break through. And sometimes what has to happen is that the old self has to die because the old self wasn't built foundationally correctly. And as Fritjof Capra, who talks about sustainability, says, those elements of life that are not based on sustainable elements will break down. Think of a building. If the building isn't built correctly, if architecturally the building is not structurally sound, I don't care how nice you make the rooms and how cute you furnish it, et cetera, if everything isn't aligned properly, then one little earthquake or one beam that isn't sound that cracks can break the whole structure down. It's the same thing with ourselves foundationally. If we don't put together ourselves properly, if we weren't put together properly, which many of us weren't, because going back to Dr. John Bowlby, who foundationally is a person, a doctor that I take a lot of my thinking from, talks about how to raise a healthy human being. And in order to do so, we need basic elements. We need that eye contact, that skin contact, that consistency, parents that mirror and attune to us. We need a loving, nurturing environment, or as much as that as possible, called the good enough parenting. And if we don't get that, again, at the core of us, we're not structurally built properly. So, how to have a healthy relationship with ourselves? Okay, number one, recognize where and what those lies are and where they came from. So, it is identifying the cause of the problem, looking at the reaction to the problem, and then identifying the negative core beliefs that we interpret about ourselves in the world. And once we get a hold of that, we can say, oh, wow, I thought, based on the way I was treated, that I'm stupid or ugly or unlovable or a mistake, or that I'll never amount to anything. And once we can identify that and we can link it to the lies and the misinterpretations, the misencodings of childhood, then we could start to distance ourselves from that, and instead of identifying with the lies, we can just identify the lies. So I will say that that is a very important step for the process of developing a relationship with yourself. So identifying the lies is the first process of identifying what you don't want to identify with, if that makes sense to you. And again, this is a call-in show, so I know you're out there. I've had a lot of calls about many subjects, and I know this is a little bit of a different subject because I want to start the new year with building a sense of healthy self. What could be more important than your relationship with yourself? So if you look at panel number 6, you can see that it's really important to break down the old structures and get the psychological poison out. And once we can do that, then we can start to have a clearer vision of ourself and life itself. And I think we have a caller. So hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. Happy New Year. And who's on the couch?
Hi, Dr. Judy.
Yes, hi. And who am I speaking to, please?
Hi, my name is Robert.
Robert? Okay,
Yeah.
turn down the volume a little. It's really, thank you. Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for calling in. Have you been listening to other shows, or is this the first time you've seen the show?
I've been listening to your show for a few weeks.
Okay.
I enjoy it. Appreciate your work.
Thank you very much, Robert. And where are you calling from? What part of the world do you live in?
New Jersey.
Okay, it must be late there, and thanks for staying up and calling in. So tell me how you relate to this particular topic.
Made me think about my father. He was, most likely a malignant narcissist,
Okay.
and he was an extremely crazy person, and he was. I would say he was abusive in every way.
Can you give examples so that that I can understand the treatment you received?
Yeah. I guess if you have time, I'll just give you one quick story that about him being like a put down artist. When I
Mm-hmm.
was about 7 or 8 years old, we went to this. We went to this theme park. There's this place called Six Flags, and they have these cartoon artists there, and they draw like cartoon drawings of you with like the big heads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we were getting a cartoon drawing done of me and my sister
Okay.
and my younger sister. And then after we finished, my father said to me, "Oh, a lot of people were watching when he was drawing your sister, but when he started drawing you, they went, ugh,"
What?
and like they recoiled in like disgust.
You mean disgust in what was coming out on the paper, or I guess he was implying that you were disgusting?
Yeah, like that. Like like so ugly that they were like recoiling in disgust.
Wow. And how
And
old were you? How old were you?
I think I was about 7 or 8 years old.
And do you remember how you felt when he said that?
Um, I'm sure I felt bad, but
Mm-hmm.
when you're a kid, you don't, you're not worldly, and and like I am now, you don't really understand the situation from an adult's perspective.
Sure. And
And
do you have children? Do you have a family?
no, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, you know
Um,
that in hindsight, right? You know that was just way out there of a thing to say to your child. You recognize that.
I recognize that. You're looking back and reading a lot of self-help books, and I've been in therapy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That he was an extremely disturbed person, and he was severely abused himself.
Okay.
And
And that's the multi-generational pass down from his abuse to his not having a very good sense of self to passing down this, I was talking about imploding and exploding, and projection is a form of exploding and projecting all of this onto you. So, how do you think this affected your sense of self?
it certainly damaged me. I've had, I probably still have, it's low self-esteem, and my confidence is a little better than it used to be. But yeah, it's affected my self-esteem and confidence. And just growing up with him, that I was awkward and very shy for a long time, but I've spent a lot of time working on improving my social skills, and
And so,
it's taken a long time, but I probably still have his messages encoded in me, like you say.
yeah.
But
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, he did uh, a lot of projection with a lot of different things, and I didn't find out until later on when I educated myself a little bit. I even knew what that was.
So
But
what you did by educating yourself is that you started using your thinking process, your cognition to analyze some of this, and in the process of that, maybe you exposed some of his psychopathology and identified it and started to wonder if you don't have to be a rocket scientist, right, to conclude that this kind of a treatment of a child is not going to make a very healthy blueprint. The thing that happens with children, and Alice Miller, I refer to her a lot. She wrote a book called Drama of the Gifted Child, and what she commented was that the child takes it upon him or herself, all the blame and all the shame, because the child would rather be the bad child in a good world. Because if you are the bad one, that preserves your parents to be the good people, and you can continue to idealize them and look up to them and use them as a role model. The problem is that we need at some point to take that old system down. So can you see how he shadowed over your core belief about yourself, and he left a blueprint, an imprint, so to speak. And I'm imagining it was something like, just to go for the core of it, my impression is that you must have been left with that you're ugly, or that you're hideous, or that you're not socially acceptable, something like this. Does that ring true to you?
All of the above. He used to tell me, he a bunch of times he said, you're a loser, blah blah blah.
So there's more, more.
No
There's
one
more.
likes you.
Yeah. And then you have the sister. It seems like she was the pretty one, right? She came out well on paper, literally, figuratively. Was she the golden child?
Not for him. Like, that was our family was it was kind of like split. And after a certain amount of time, my sister she's the golden child for my mother.
Okay.
She spent most of her time with my mother, and then my father really tried to just take me over and like control every aspect of my life.
And how's your relationship with your sister?
Not good.
Okay.
We really don't have any relationship.
I suggest that you watch one of my older videos on sibling rivalry and start understanding on a deeper level how parents are the cause of that. They literally set their children up to dislike each other by idealizing one, devaluing the other, or letting one attack the other. I call those flying monkeys, setting their own children up to be flying monkeys. Why? Because just to define narcissism from the way that I see it, from a mind map perspective, it's a system gone wrong. And when parents put their own needs before their children, when they don't have the quality of empathy, and they don't demonstrate the ability to self-reflect and self-correct, meaning own their own stuff, if they can't even own their own stuff and they're not teaching their children to evolve and become better people, then where's the blueprint, right? And so
Right.
So let me ask you this, just knowing a little bit about this, what are some ways you think you can now have a better relationship with yourself, given that the blueprint wasn't very good?
Putting myself first. I have to set the ground rules for how I demand to be treated in a relationship, with any kind of relationship with anyone.
Okay. I want to just comment on how we are expecting or requiring other people to treat us as a very important part of having a healthy relationship with ourselves. People talk about the law of attraction. We attract to us, so we might attract to us people who are vampires. I talk a lot about vampiring, people who suck our energy and leave us high and dry, and they take from us. And that's never going to produce any light. So people who have healthier senses of self will have a more balanced give and take in relationship, and they'll be able to be more separated and individuated versus codependent and and loose with their boundaries. When people have that healthy sense of self, they can merge with other people, and then they can separate from other people's. And so on the one end of the extreme, they're not showing a narcissistic core, which is the hardening of the heart, nor are they showing what is commonly known as the loose structure, more of the borderline personality, cluster B personality, where the membrane is very open, very permeable. So we want to balance this, and so you're right. Okay, so I just want to make a comment about that. So think about not so much the law of attraction, because we'll attract people and I guess repel other people. The law of allowance. So what are you going to allow into your life? And if you continue to allow people in who are going to demean, devalue, destroy, and discard you, what's going to happen is that you're going to re-trigger your WTF, your what the Freud. And so you will be opening up old childhood wounds. You will have the same reactions. Your negative core beliefs will be triggered, and then you'll be in panel number 456, WTF. You'll be in chaos. You'll be breaking down. And eventually, after the defenses blow, then the whole thing will kind of implode or explode on you, neither which is desirable. So I like your answer. The first thing to do in having a healthy relationship with yourself is to have appropriate boundaries. That is really, really important. Anything else that you could think of to have a healthy relationship with yourself, given what you experienced and what you internalized?
Just to, sometimes I have to repeat, to myself, to remind myself that, what he said has no validity.
Yes.
And that he was a very sick, mentally sick person.
Yes.
And that, he's in, just the fact of him, saying that I'm a loser has no validity, because he, he died like pretty much penniless,
Mm-hmm.
and that he overdosed on pills,
Oh, wow.
and that's how he died.
So,
And,
so can you see the projection? So, do you think that your father was able to own his lack of self-esteem? Do you think he was able to self-reflect on his inability to make a living, his inability to really fulfill himself? It sounds to me that he projected that all onto you know who.
Right. He also did a lot of. I suspect that he was a self-hating homosexual, because he was always projecting that on me. He was always telling me that I'm gay, or insinuating that. Even going back to when I was in middle school.
So it's really, really hard for us to have a clear view of ourselves when it's competing with our parental view of us. And it's confusing as a child. It gets ingrained into the fiber of our being. I'm gonna go on with some information and take other callers. Robert, do you have a copy of my book?
Yes.
You do? Okay, the PDF version or the actual version of it?
The PDF.
Okay, great. Okay, so, and also feel free to call at the Psychological Healing Center if you have any other questions, and if you want to connect with the team. And what you shared is really important, because I think by your sharing with me and the audience, people can see how your sense of self was destroyed, shattered. And so now it takes for you to carefully repeat to yourself, wait a minute, I'm not this and I'm not that. Wait, is that really true? Does that come from a sick person? So thank you so much for calling in. Be in touch anytime, and I'll just continue with more information about how to have a healthy relationship with ourselves, the most important person in our lives. And thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you, Dr. Judy.
Pleasure. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone listening is understanding that this is a systems kind of thinking. And when we start identifying the encodings that don't work for us, then we can start to recode into health. And I want to get a little bit more detailed about what encoding into health means, and maybe share a little bit about how I'm doing this this year for myself. For one, I have a statement in my book, something like health begets health. So I'm going to take the call in just a second. Hold on, don't hang up. Health begets health. So I know that when I do something healthy for myself, I don't want to cancel it out. So if I go to yoga, which I'm trying to do a lot more frequently, then I don't exactly want to have a glass of wine afterwards. I don't want to have a big, greasy plate of French fries. Health begets health. That's part of the recoding, is physical as well. And hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. Who am I talking to?
Yeah, hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
Good.
And where are you calling from?
Illinois.
Okay, thank you for staying up late and talking to me in the audience. So what the Freud is going on with your life, your sense of self, and your desire to perhaps have a better relationship with yourself.
Well, I'd like to start off. I really appreciate the title. As something I've been working on lately with myself,
Okay.
and understanding how important that is to have, a good relationship with yourself. But
Yes.
I came from a mother who was just very, very, very damaged, and
Yeah.
obviously, I got your book and I've been watching your videos.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned a few things, but she was just extremely damaged human being, and of course she damaged myself and my sisters.
Okay.
I have 5 sisters, and 3 of my sisters struggle with alcohol and drugs, and you can just see the aftermath. And for me, it's like I always had an issue, because she would. Her words to us were, you're stupid, you're an idiot,
Yeah.
you can't do anything right. So, you grow up that you believe that about yourself.
It's
And
amazing how common that message is. What is it? Do parents exchange notes? Is there some sort of a meetup group of how to put your children down best? I mean, it's so unbelievable that the messages are so universal and common. And so part of this was verbal abuse, obviously.
yes,
And what about
and
physical?
physical abuse.
And physical abuse. So you got it
Yeah.
both ways. So the message
Yes.
was what?
Well, the message, what I took that as that, I'm an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything right.
Right.
And if I did anything wrong, even if it was to her, if it was wrong,
Yeah.
it was just physical abuse on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I didn't understand it when I was young, but as now, as I'm older, I can look back and I say, oh my gosh, she was projecting all this crap onto us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but here I am as an adult, and it's like I even when I have accomplishments in my life, like graduating college or anything, I could never ever feel good about it.
Well, that's because parents set the bar. In my book, I write about this as well. Parents set the bar. So in other words, if they think you're stupid or they think you're a loser, then that's the bar. And it's really hard. It's really, really difficult to think higher than that. So maybe let's do this. Let's have a 1-minute truth dialogue with your parent, and I will represent your parent in this dialogue. Okay, so let's say that for this moment, you want to tell me the truth, and I'm just going to be that person to listen to the truth. What would you say to a parent that treated you like this if you were being honest and you didn't have fear of retribution? What would you say? So if
You
I
mean
as
like
a parent, yeah, if I'm as a parent saying, "Oh, you're stupid. Oh, you're a loser. Oh, you'll never amount to anything." And you're now hearing it through a truth lens of who I am, I quote the parent am, then what would you say to that parent if there was no fear of retribution, if you can just go with the truth? What would you say?
Not sure. I so it's hard for me to answer that. Obviously there was a lot of hate towards her,
Okay.
a lot of anger, a lot of hurt.
Okay, so what would that sound
Um,
like? Just let's go ahead and play that out for a minute. So, if I were your mother or your father, what would you say to me?
I don't know. It's hard.
Okay,
I
so
don't
so let me
know.
comment on that. This is how we get silenced because we're so
Yeah,
scared to say the truth to our parents. That's why it's not a good
right.
idea to say the truth to our parents. A lot of therapists will say, well, then tell your mother or your father how much you hate them. Well, that doesn't work really well because they usually defend on that against it and throw it back in your face, and then your sense of self is even further damaged. And so if you're trying to develop a sense of self, I don't recommend it. Okay, so that's why it's important to get the feelings. So not to implode, not to explode, unload and tell the truth. So, how many children do you know who would say, you know, mom and dad, your parenting skills suck? What the Freud are you talking about? How
Hmm.
can you talk to a child like this? It seems to me like that you're having a problem. It seems to me that you're in a very, very unhealed state. How many children would be able to say that to their parents?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know what you're saying. I understand it.
Right.
Um, I think I think for me, it's just the hurt is so deep.
That's what
And
happens.
it's like
Okay.
I'm afraid of everything,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I never can feel good about my accomplishments. And
Okay.
the crazy thing is when I take time out to do something for myself, I'm very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be school or work or anything, I mean, I'm usually at the top
And then
and
what do
high
you,
GPA, but I can never feel good about it.
interesting. So you were able to cognitively. Here is one thing that happens when we're developmentally arrested, and this is what childhood wounds do. They arrest us developmentally. Cognitively, you might think, "Oh, that's obviously I got an A on that exam. Yes, I'm doing very well at my job. Yes, this project turned out well." It's just that the emotions have not. They don't catch up. They don't catch up
Right.
with the reality. So, in order to have a relationship with ourselves, we have to align with the truth. So, the truth is that you do very well in some areas of your life. The truth is that parents set the bar. The truth is you keep going to the truth of your parents. I'll put in quotes the truth. It's not the truth. You know it's not the truth because your accomplishments speak volumes. And so, in order to have that healthy relationship with ourselves, we need to buy into truth feedback, not lie feedback. And in order to do that, we have to get the psychological pain and the poison out. And the problem is, we can't with our primary caregivers either because they're way dead in some cases, or they won't listen and they'll defend, or they will retaliate in some way, shape, or form. So that what happens is we're stuck with the feelings, and these limiting feelings, again, they lock us in psychological prison and we cannot grow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it'd be nice. It'd be nice for to hear the truth about myself. And I
Okay.
could tell myself, yeah, Brian, hey, and hey, Jeff, you did great and all that, and
Okay,
but at the same time,
so
it's
so Jeff,
hard to do that.
so Jeff, if I were a truthful representation of your parents, we'll just do this for a minute, and I'm not even thinking that this will really impact you too much because they've been in your head for so long and the psychovirus is alive and well, then I might say something like, Jeff, can I talk to you about the truth? Is that okay? I'm being your parents right now. Can I talk to you about the truth?
Yes.
Okay, the truth is that I have no parenting skills. Okay, the truth
Yeah, that'd
is
be the truth.
yeah, and the truth is I never learned any, and the truth is that I live in pain, and the truth is I have a very deep hole in my soul, and the truth is that when I put you down, it makes me feel better for about a millisecond, and then I feel horrible again, and then I have to put you down again, and it's some kind of a bad drug that I'm on, and it kind of releases me for a millisecond, but then the anger and the hurt builds up again, and you're my punching bag, and that's how I've treated you, and that's the truth,
Yeah, yeah, that's the truth. That's what
right?
happened.
Right. And if a parent is truly defended, which most parents who behave like that are, if they have that deep hole in the soul that they haven't healed themselves, then they're acting in a very primitive way. And guess when they're going to tell the truth?
Hmm.
Take a wild guess. Guess when that level of truth is going to come out of their mouth?
Oh, not very often.
Like maybe never. Maybe
Yeah,
never.
maybe
Okay?
never.
Maybe never. So, what we do, because we want to complete the psychological file, Sigmund Freud, Dr. Freud talks about the repetition principle. We'll go back into that dynamic in order to complete the psychological file. And it never completes because the herder cannot be the healer. So you keep going back to the herder, whether it's the original herder, mom and dad, or a representation of that herder, another person with the same psychological dynamic, so that you can play it again and this time get a better completion. It's just that it doesn't happen. So what do? We've got to go back to ourselves, and we have to understand that if indeed we want to get out of this psychological jail, we have to follow the pathway of truth. And so I want to emphasize how important it is to have a better relationship with yourself, to follow the truth path. And I'm going to take one more caller. And again, I want to invite you to call the Psychological Healing Center anytime. We have a beautiful team of people there, and you can at any time have a free consultation. We can go into this further. Thank you so much for calling, and I really appreciate your sharing this. And remember, identify the truths and the lies.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome, Jeff. Take care. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night. And hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. I think the person hung up. Well, call back if we still have a few minutes. Some practical things, okay? So this is from an article on how to cultivate your most important relationship, the one with yourself, by Jacqueline Basolto, December 27th, 2017. Only you can figure out what you want, and once you know, no one can take it away from you. So this is, again, when we work on cultivating that relationship, no one can take it away from us. That's the beauty of it. So we, by cultivating that relationship, are building our own personal power. And we're also establishing our own locus of control, which is personal power. As difficult as it can be, understanding what we want to do with our life is an incredibly important task. A lot of us look to other people, teachers, parents, to define who we are. At the end of the day, no one has the answer. Okay, so if you want to be practical about it, then even though you may be in pain and suffering and believing in the lies, just take a moment and push them aside and just ask yourself, turn inward, and whatever inward of light you have in yourself, and I know it's there, ask yourself, what's important to you? What are your values? What are the lies that you for sure can identify with? What are some of the thoughts and feelings that interfere with your ability to manifest yourself? If it's related to your job, I'm a firm believer, and so is Harvard studies, a firm believer that when you live a life and have a life that's passionate, if your job is your passion, then chances are you're going to be a lot more successful. And so a lot of people live a life of definition according to your parents. Oh, you should be a lawyer. Oh, you should be an accountant. Oh, you should be a doctor. How many people do we know whose parents have told them that they should be this and should be that? Well, maybe you love being a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is that you love. And if you're a parent, it's really important to understand who your child is. And in this case, if you're a better parent to yourself, it's very important to understand what your passion is, because your passion is what's going to drive you. And that driving force is really, really important to have momentum to pull you forward. If you're caught in an intention or a goal that is not really true to your mind, body, soul, then there's going to be no driving force. There's no healthy relationship without loving yourself first. I want to refer to Murray Bowen. Dr. Murray Bowen talks about separation and individuation. And if we don't go through healthy dependency, we can't have a healthy independence. And so what happens with that is that we can become codependent on people. And as a result of that, we can destabilize relationships by leaning too hard on people and then not having the give and take and the phenomenon of light between that relationship. And that happens when we don't get the good enough parenting. And then, of course, we try to complete our lives through other people, and that's really, really difficult because it could end up breaking a relationship, and the intention is to do just the opposite. So very important is to have that time to separate and individuate. Once you do this, you love for the right reasons, and you choose only to give your love to people who will be able to accept it and promote your well-being right back at you. And I call that panel number 7, interconnection. Healthy love is healthy love in the sense that it's give and take, it has appropriate boundaries, it helps the other person become a better human being, and at the end of that system, you now have a system gone right. So as a result of loving yourself, you are on the road to having good relationships not only with yourself, but with other people, and avoid the pitfalls of falling into unhealthy relationships that I talk a lot about on my shows, codependent relationships, relationships with narcissistic systems, borderline, loose boundary systems, and so on. And so back to boundaries, that's a really, really important aspect of having a healthy relationship with yourself. We come into the world alone and we will go out alone. It is so true. It would be really great to die surrounded by people that you love. This does not take away the fact that we do, however, happily or tragically die at some point. At the moment we are taken from this life, you do not want to regret not having been good to yourself and your wants and your needs. Your relationship with yourself dictates how altruistic you become, because remember, what you don't have inside, you can't give to the outside. It's an inside-out model when everything is fulfilled within. When you're not at peace with yourself, it's really difficult to focus on impacting others and spreading kindness to the world. I know for sure that when I take care of myself, I'm in a much more peaceful state. For me, when I do yoga and eat in a healthy way, I do know that I have more energy, I have more clear-sightedness, I sleep better, my emotions are balanced. And so whatever it is that you do to have that be for you, engage in it. Better food, better exercise, better meditation, better connection with your with people that you choose carefully who nurture you and give back and have a mutuality with. Do things alone. Really important. Do things alone. You don't always have to do something with someone. Take that time to take yourself on a date. So there's a lot that you can do. Obviously, the list goes on and on and on. I do want to get to my favorite part, shrink that tune. And so don't forget, you can call in for consultation. We offer free consultations at the Psychological Healing Center. We do teletherapy, Skype therapy. You can partake in having a free copy of the PDF, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect book. And also the Mind Map video series is still available at $195, discounted from $595. Please avail yourself of that. And with that said, I'm going to quickly shrink the tune. Jess Glenn, don't be so hard on yourself. I'll kind of go through this quickly. I came here with a broken heart that no one else could see. I drew a smile on my face to paper over me. This is the false self. The wounds heal and tears dry and cracks they don't show, so don't be so hard on yourself. No, let's go back to simplicity. I feel like I've been missing me. That's where the relationship is broken. Missing the wholeness of me. Was not who I'm supposed to be. I felt this darkness over me. That's the shadows and the wounds. We all get there eventually. I never knew where I belonged, but I was right and you were wrong. Been telling myself all along, don't be so hard on yourself. No, learn to forgive, learn to let go. Everyone trips, everyone falls. So again, be easy on yourself. You will trip and fall. So don't be so hard on yourself. No, because I'm just tired of marching on my own, kind of frail. I feel it in my bones. Oh, let my heart turn into stone. That's where we start shelling up. So don't be so hard on yourself. And it just goes on and on. Was not who I was supposed to be. So that goes back to the shattering of the original sense of self. Don't be so hard on yourself. Learn to forgive, in this case yourself. Everyone trips. Tired of marching on my own? Well, you don't have to be surrounded by people who are going to be on your team. Oh, let my heart turn into stone. And that's the defense of the other side. You know, too hard, too soft, semi-permeable membrane is the healthy way to go. So don't be so hard on yourself. I learned to wave goodbye, how not to see my life. So it looks like this person is somehow forgiving themselves for being so hard on themselves and waving goodbye, maybe to the past of the multi-generations, and maybe hopefully giving themselves a chance to have a better life. So with that said, I want to thank you so much for all your support over the years and for calling in and for working on yourselves, because that's how we have a better world. We all have to work and do our part. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.